We are here at the Everything Electric Canada 2024 here in Vancouver, and I am with a very special guy. And if you follow anything EV, you know who he is, but this is Robert, and he has, well, you're the founder of Fully Charged,
yes,
and now Everything Electric.
Yeah.
So kick us off and tell us why the rebrand, why change to Everything Electric?
Right, I mean, it was a lot of discussions, as you can imagine. The Fully Charged show has been going now coming up to 15 years, so it's been a long time.
Congratulations.
And so that was quite a well-known look and a brand, if you like. And so with that, when we first did live shows, they were called Fully Charged Live or whatever. And then what was so obvious was that it wasn't just us, but we always wanted to promote other aspects of electrification, of decarbonisation, of clean tech, not just cars. And Fully Charged is very, very, very focused on, the brand is very sort of, people think it's cars,
right?
Even though we have done bikes and planes and boats and all kinds of other things. And then we had another channel anyway called Everything Electric, which was a deliberate, that was before we started thinking about rebranding another channel called Everything Electric, which then meant Fully Charged is basically about cars, and Everything Electric is about everything else. So all the bike reviews we do, the planes, the boats, everything else, the grid stuff, the renewable
solar,
stuff, all that kind of thing is on Everything Electric. And it just seemed to encompass what we were doing better. Everything Electric as a title,
right?
Even if you've never watched YouTube in your life, never knew anything about it, you'd kind of go, oh, it's about everything that's electric.
Right.
It's sort of an obvious title.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, Fully Charged just came out of the ether 15 years ago, and I don't know why, I don't know.
Well,
So,
I've been following you, not for the full 15, but for at least, 7 or 8 years, minimum. 2017, I think I picked up on you guys and been following along, and it's exciting to see how it's really grown into this global phenomenon. I mean, kudos to you. I mean, you were in the early days of electric and really battling the FUD. I'd like to kind of talk to that a little bit of kind of like all of the pushback and all the nonsense, and really a lot of it is untrue. And so pretty much all of it. And so kind of practically, but also educationally, can you speak to that as to kind of the hurdles you've overcome over the years?
I mean, I think there's in a way two sides to it. There's the absolute, genuine, legitimate, perfectly reasonable anxiety about a new technology that you're not familiar with, that is a new thing, and it's completely understandable. You go, well, if I drive, it might run out like my phone. Our experience of things with batteries, not that good, especially early smartphones, early portable electronics. The batteries ran out, and you go, what if that's a car? And it's that educational process of going, well, it's not quite the same as a phone. It's like it is a slightly different technology. But there's that aspect of it, and then there is obviously some really big and powerful and politically powerful and wealthy institutions and industries that are directly threatened by this technology, and they haven't been quiet. They have spent a lot of money doing it. But what's really hard is to filter those two out so that you're not just going, oh, the oil industry are just negative about it. It's all that. I think there's a lot of perfectly legitimate resistance to changing things, that's normal human behavior. And I think it's what this show, and what we've been doing around the world with these is it really, it doesn't tell you that electric cars are okay. You can have a go in one. Go and take
experience it yourself.
Have a go, And we've now done well over 100,000 test drives around the world, which is, I think, absolutely extraordinary.
Wow.
And that is 100,000 people have had often their first go in an electric car at one of our events, which is fantastic, that's happened. And that is, you then go, look, my argument is it's just a car. There's lots and lots of negative stuff about cars. It doesn't matter what powers them. The way they've affected our cities. I think in a sense we're more prone to that in Europe because we've got older infrastructure that was built for people and horses and carts.
Yes.
And then you drive, I had to go in a Hummer yesterday. I'm just desperate to drive a Hummer through my village, which has still basically got goat tracks everywhere.
And it's the size of some houses.
It's slightly bigger than my house, so there's those aspects. It doesn't matter what powers that Hummer. In fact, this was an electric one, but it's still a massive, great, hefty beast. It's amazing.
Absolutely.
I think one of the things that we try and sort of, our mantra, if you like, even if it's in the background, is walk. If you can't walk, ride a bike. If you can't ride a bike, get public transport. If you can't get public transport, get a taxi or a car share. If you can't do any of those, use a private car. It's like that isn't, we're not going to achieve that.
So it's a new approach to thinking of transportation.
and our relationship with cars. And I think that's less of a challenge in Europe because we've got such we're so old and messed up.
Right. And density is a different
and I mean,
situation.
in a sense, Vancouver was built for cars from the ground up. I mean, it's built on grids. It's got wide streets. It's got plenty of places to park. You can't hear that argument. Whereas you go to a little Italian town that was built in 1403, and you drive your Hummer in there,
the cobblestones and
doesn't really work.
It's a completely different world.
Yeah.
Well, you have this unique international perspective on electrification, and I'd love to kind of get your perspective and opinion on how you see electrification kind of moving across the globe, and as far as like the manufacturers themselves, like the adoption. I mean, so my background is in Legacy Automotive, and in the retail side, and so of course, and the manufacturer that I represented for over 15 years has been quite a laggard in adoption of electrification, although there's others like, you look at, for example, Ford has really done well. Hyundai has really gone crazy in the last
Kia
couple of years.
Hyundai are amazing.
Phenomenal. So I'd love to just kind of hear your perspective as far as the manufacturers globally and adoption of it. We talk about China and we talk about some of these other countries. I'd just love to hear from you.
I mean, it is absolutely dependent on the territories. There will be countries that I've never been to where there might be one electric car, where it just isn't a thing. But, there are countries that are obviously way ahead, Norway being an obvious one, Denmark, Netherlands, all very, very advanced with incredible charging infrastructure, incredible sort of systems, car sharing schemes and things like that. We spoke to a family who used to own a Tesla Model X, so clearly not a poor family, live in this beautiful city, Utrecht, lovely old townhouse, nightmare to park a car, to have a private car. This is a medieval street, really narrow, and they sold their Model X and they now use a car sharing service because it's better. They say that the experience is better for us. Really? They have access to like 5 different types of car. They've got small kids. If they're taking the kids, they get a Tesla with car seats in it. Yeah. And the car sharing scheme in that city facilitates that. So they can have a little Renault Zoe 50 meters down the street, even closer, and they use that to go to the shops or take the kids to school or something. And then they use a Tesla to go on holiday, or it depends on what they've got. And that is kind of the exception. That's, when you see that, you go, if I lived there, I wouldn't own a car. You wouldn't need to. You've always got access to a car whenever you need it. And that, you kind of go, I can't see that being universal, but that is a solution of where you reduce the number of cars. You don't need as many cars to facilitate it, but I can see that's kind of a pipe dream. Okay. And so the next best thing, if you're going to have cars in cities and human beings, it's quite a good idea to have electric ones. I mean, I live in a rural area, and it's because that's one of the weird myths you get is it's all right for people in cities, but you can't live in the country. It's much easier for people in the country. My poor neighbours have got a bit of old grass outside their house they can park a car on, so and they've got an electric car. Yeah, they're not flash people. They've got a second-hand electric car, because they've got somewhere off the street to park it, which is much more common in a rural area than in an urban area. So it's exactly the other way around. It's quite tough having an electric car in a city. Yeah, that's fascinating. Like the whole concept of just eliminating the car altogether and going with some of these other alternatives. Yeah, my mind doesn't work like that because I came from the standpoint of I got to sell everybody a car. Yes, exactly. Yes.
So it's a little bit of a different world. But getting back to kind of the car industry itself, how do you see some of these manufacturers kind of shifting as far as what they're building? Perhaps they're going to be in less volume in the future because less of us will have a car and we'll do some more of these, Uber type of sharing type services. Who do you see that's really kind of that you would sort of stand up and say, give a little pat on the back to such and such a company? What do you think?
I mean, certainly the Koreans have done an amazing job. So Hyundai and Kia they make such amazingly good cars that just go a long way on the same amount of electricity that other manufacturers don't go as far.
They look pretty good too.
Yeah, they look pretty good. And how I don't know what so they've really got their software, their battery management. That stuff, that's what you realise is that I grew up with internal combustion engines and carburetors and fan belts and all that. And then you go, I understood that technology, and then this is like, this is software. I don't even know. I mean, I know there's young people that tap on keyboards really quickly, and that's just a blur to me. But that is what you really, the more electric cars you drive, the more you realise that's what's at the forefront. And I think that's the big struggle for a lot of certainly the European legacy car makers, and I think in the United States. And it's when you suddenly get in a Ford or a GM car or a Volkswagen or a BMW. Recently drove a BMW a long way in France, and you go, oh, this is good. They've finally gone, look, we've got the styling and the steering and the road holding. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
And the build quality is fantastic and the seats are really comfy. But now the software, and they've suddenly got that to work, and it tells you how far you've got. And
Yes.
it preheats when you say you're going to go to this charger, it knows it's a charger, like Tesla do.
Yes.
They're basically catching up
Yeah.
with all that stuff. And that is critical. That is really important.
Those are tools that I see as they're crucial to adoption of the actual technologies.
Yeah.
For me, what I've noticed, again, more on the retail side, is that people will pay more for convenience. And
Yes.
if the newer incumbent technology is inconvenient or difficult or scary, like we started as saying, fearful, anxieties, people aren't going to buy it, even if it is significantly better.
Yeah.
And so I think it's great to see that most of these concerns that consumers have are being solved by software.
They slowly are. I mean, it is that thing with the first electric car I had, and there's no polite way of saying
What
this.
was that car?
It was a Mitsubishi i-MiEV. So that was in 2009.
The iMEV, yes.
iMEV.
And it was a funny looking thing.
Funny looking thing, really good, great little car. I loved driving it. But that had under a human bladder range, and that is I know that's a bit under human comfort range. Let's put it like that, so that it would only do about 70 or 80 miles. On a nice warm day. In the winter, it was less. And now all the cars I've driven in the last, say, 5 years are all way above human comfort range. Way. So when we drove right across France, so 500 miles there, 500 miles back, we stopped, I think, 3 times on the way there. We only charged once.
Okay.
So we stopped 2 times, nothing to do with the car.
Yes.
The car was fine.
Yes.
We stopped there because we needed a little break. It was a long drive on the autoroutes. It's a long day's drive. And the same on the way back. And the thing we learnt was, particularly in France, the autoroute you pay to use them. They're big freeways, very nice roads. And we spent more on autoroute tolls than we did on electricity. And we were charging on expensive rapid charges. So,
well, you're preaching to the choir here, because I recently took my Model S Plaid across Canada, all the way across and back. To your point, you're needing to get out of the car before the car is ready to be recharged. And it's interesting too, some of the smaller communities that I went into, people were baffled to even see an electric car there. How do you do it? How do you get around? I took it out to Newfoundland, across the ferry and to some of these really remote communities. And it's interesting to see how many people just don't know what's out there and what vehicles are capable of. And then, we have things like the Lucid, that go incredible amount of kilometers on a charge, but they're expensive. And so I think moving forward, in my opinion, would be let's work towards getting these technologies to cheaper.
And I mean, it is also the thing that I think that it took me a while to realize, but essentially internal combustion technology, so the technology behind a combustion engine has reached peak. It's amazing.
It's not getting any better.
Reliability, really, 100 years of development. They are those new engines are fantastic.
They're very thrifty in petrol.
Very thrifty. Whereas the technology behind electric cars is that it's like Model T level. And what's about to come out from China is the new MG4, which is a car I've got, which is extraordinary. I mean, the range that car's got in comparison to the cost. Is that game changer? This is a
range for
car.
cost. You nailed
it. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And they will be selling solid state battery versions of the MG4 next year, and they've perfected. And my understanding of solid state technology is limited. But it is much smaller, much lighter, charges much faster, lasts much longer. So the recharge discharge cycles is up in the many tens of thousands, which we're talking sort of 40 years of useful life.
Much
so the car will fall to bits way before the car, So that's what you can't really, you can't say electric car technology. It's at the start of a
we're really at
revolution.
the beginning. It's our children, grandchildren that are really going to benefit from these and really like fully charged. I mean, you just mentioned that we've been doing it for 15 years. And that's just going to be like a spot of time.
Just the beginning of it.
Really the grassroots effort. So
well, also if you think of then there were like 3 or 4 models available anywhere in the world. You go downstairs now, you can't count them. There's so many, and there are some amazing cars.
And to your point, we're seeing the technology and the adoption, not only manufacturing level, the consumer level, but municipalities and politicians now are realizing, hey, this isn't just a little sideshow fad. This is the way forward.
And I think that we also haven't mentioned is things like public transport. So you've got a fabulous. I love your old buses with the overhead power delivery, which is fantastic. we should have electric buses. Well, we've got electric buses. We've had them for 50 years. But, you know, in London now, there's been like really measurable, noticeable improvement in air quality.
Okay.
Because we now have, I think it's close to 1,200 electric buses on the road.
Wow.
Red double,
Okay.
you wouldn't know they were different. They're red double-decker buses, the old traditional buses. All the taxis are electric now. That's really common.
Excellent.
And obviously all the delivery vans are electric. So it's all the things that aren't cars that are, and that make economic sense. So Transport for London, which is the group that runs all the buses, they're saving money by they don't buy diesel.
Yeah.
They've now done deals with big electricity suppliers that charge their buses overnight. They save so much money on fuel.
And maintenance as well.
And maintenance
lot
is
less
so
maintenance.
much less. Yeah. And they don't break down.
It seems to be there's these trickle down economics.
Yeah.
You know, to moving towards a sustainable future for everyone.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a cyclist, and I mean, you know, when you're riding along the road and you have those big diesel trucks, you can't even breathe, even though you're already out of breath. You know. So it's literally a breath of fresh air to see these technologies come through, and it's really. You know, programs like this, like Everything Electric and Fully Charged Live, that are educating politicians, educating the consumers, educating the manufacturers, and giving them tangible data to, you know, to measure things like results and interest in new products and things like that, and exposure to new markets. So really appreciate everything you've been doing for the movement over the years. So if nobody says thank you, I will. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks
Ron.
very much
It's been
indeed.
a pleasure.
Great
Guys, we'll see you in the next video.